South Park just wrapped up its 26th season with a pretty scathing take on Andrew Tate, Donald Trump, and the Manosphere in general, so let's break it down. It's spring break in South Park, and Mr. Garrison surprises his boyfriend Rick with a relaxing getaway to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But since South Carolina is a red state, Rick fears Garrison will revert back to his old habit of rallying, or riling people up with fiery political rhetoric and then running for president. Of course, this is exactly what happens. Meanwhile, Sharon and Shelley head to Santa Fe, leaving Stan and Randy alone to do guy stuff all week. When Randy realizes that Stan's idea of spring break is playing Warhammer 40k with Token, he blames it on the liberal media conditioning boys to be ashamed of their natural masculine urge to get hammered, host wed t-shirt contests, and watch mud wrestling.
They've taught you boys to be ashamed of being boys.
So Randy enlists the assistance of basically Andrew Tate, who brings some sex and drugs to the farm so the boys can experience a real man's spring break. Garrison's all-night rallies create a rift in his relationship with Rick, and Randy trashes the house and injures himself partying too hard. The episode ends with two men realizing that without their partners, they're destined to wallow away in self-destruction. At the core of this episode are two men who, when faced with the freedom of spring break, slide back into destructive habits, but the difference between them is quite interesting. On the one hand, we have Randy, who tells Stan that with the women gone, they can do whatever they want. But when, for Stan, that translates to playing board games and not going full-on Wolf of Wall Street, Randy thinks something is awry, that Stan has been feminized by the liberal media. The obvious irony here is that Stan and Token are playing Warhammer 40k, which is pretty much the most dude-centric thing in existence. A far cry from them being, in Randy's words, ashamed of their gender, but nonetheless, Randy assumes that some kind of ideological force is weighing on Stan's ability to make a free decision, because true masculinity is basically just hedonism, right? Well, of course not. Randy is once again just being an idiot. Throughout the episode, he invokes essentialist language when he says that Stan's natural innate male desires or his natural male instincts are suppressed, as if anything a man, or in this case a 9-year-old boy, wants to do outside of playing grab-ass must be due to ideological capture or as a kind of performance carried out for fear of being cancelled, which is the conclusion that Randy comes to when Token's dad doesn't reciprocate his panic about the boy's behavior.
Don't worry, I'm gonna take care of it.
But the episode quite cleverly points out that Randy doesn't want to rage as much as he thinks he does. After one night of partying, things get too real and he has to call Sharon back from her vacation early. Even though he spent the entire episode suggesting the boys are performing what he considers to be anti-masculine behavior, turns out it was in fact he who was being the performative one. He accuses Stan and Token of caving to social pressures and disavowing their true impulse to be debaucherous, but in fact, he was the one caving to a social pressure imposed on men. That in order to be truly masculine, men need to be aggressively libidinous and recklessly indulgent. The notion that anything less than that is feminine is pure ideology. Although this is wholly conjecture, I can't help but wonder how honest Randy was being when he said that his youth was spent getting drunk and chasing skirts. I suspect that a lot of men, including maybe even Randy, were more like Token's dad.
I mean, you went balls out on spring break, right? Tried to see chicks' boobs and stuff? No, I didn't.
Who largely abstained from that behavior for one reason or another. I sometimes feel like a pressure imposed upon men is less the natural desire for wild behavior and indiscriminate sex, which undoubtedly exists, but more the unnatural desire to desire wild behavior and indiscriminate sex. In other words, the mythologized virile party animal image of masculinity is just a really successful marketing campaign, and the real object of desire is to live up to the behavior of the sensualist masculine stereotype sold to us in media and advertising, more so than men actually desiring the women in the booze. And that's what figures like Andrew Tate or Romanian sex trafficker Alonzo Fininsky, as he's called in the episode, are so good at selling us. The desire to desire. Andrew Tate desires models, he desires six-figure cars, he desires designer clothes, exotic cigars, and private movie theaters. For men struggling with feelings of inadequacy and insecurity, the imposition to desire more is kryptonite to their self-esteem, giving figures like Tate so much power over the Randys of the world. There's a real guilt that men experience for preferring reading over clubbing or gaming over serial dating, because it's antithetical to the way masculinity is sold to us. Sometimes we don't feel depressed because our desires aren't fulfilled, we feel depressed because we feel we're not desiring the right things. For guys like Stan, Token, and Token's dad, though, their masculine potency doesn't have to be legitimized by desiring the things peddled by media, advertising, and accused sex traffickers. As for Randy, well, he's Randy. On the other hand, we have our other backslider, Garrison, whose struggle to resist rallying is dramatized like a recovering sex addict confronting the temptation to black out, hook up with dudes, and forfeit the next day to recovery. Likening this dangerous dopamine loop to the buzz one gets from a cult-like political rally is a humorous juxtaposition, with the state of American politics at a fever pitch of hysteria. Characterizing political participation as an addiction relapse is more than apt. Garrison is the other side of the coin. For him, debauchery isn't done in a desperate attempt for authenticity. It's truly impulsive. He really is a degenerate who, when faced with people's pleas for a leader who will echo their vitriol, can't help but give them what they want, even if it turns him into a monster. When we talk about the terms that Randy uses like innate impulses in the context of partying, it's not as glamorous as Andrew Tate's inescapable YouTube shorts. It's actually just sad. The social pressure Garrison faces is less a foolish attempt to recapture masculine vitality and more a truly tragic sensory addict incapable of controlling his ability to rage. But hope in this episode is eventually found in relationships. Randy realizes he needs Sharon to temper his proclivity for horrible decisions, and Mr. Garrison apologizes to Rick, admitting that his presence has been the only thing keeping him from reverting to his old ways. Both parties are ultimately sensitive and vulnerable to social pressures to inform their behavior, and it's our relationships that elevate us above those pressures. They can put us on an even keel, level us. With a healthy relationship, we don't feel the need to perform, to prove how manly we are, or seek sensory gratification from huge crowds chanting your name. It's a mutual recognition that makes it so that we don't have to sneak out in the middle of the night on the hunt for new identities, social statuses, or virility. We're there to affirm each other. The episode ends with Garrison returning to South Park with Rick, who says, "We'll see what happens regarding Garrison's potential return to politics." I think this has two meanings. First, that Garrison's return as Trump in future episodes depends largely on what happens in American politics in the next year, which, judging from the recent news, is sure to be a circus. And secondly, I think Matt and Trey are still cautious about committing one of their best characters to orange makeup for another 4 years. The Garrison as Trump episodes are a pretty mixed bag, and I think Trey is aware that sometimes making Trump funny is borderline impossible. Although I found this episode insightful, I didn't think it was very funny. The comparison between gay hookup culture and rallying MAGA people was funny in concept, but at least for me, it rarely produced more than a chuckle. But overall, I would say the 26th season of South Park was a huge success. The Megan episode proved they can still shake the world with their social commentary. The Dick and Bow's episode was classic evil opportunist Cartman reminiscent of the golden era, and the Japanese toilet episode was good old-fashioned aggressive stupidity. Of course, I can't help but wish the season was longer than a measly 6 episodes, but hey, I'm grateful for what we got. So come celebrate the completion of another great South Park season with me on Twitch. I'm playing the absolutely fantastic Resident Evil 4 remake. The link for it is in the description. Also, if you appreciate the content on this channel, you can support it by checking out the Ko-fi link in the description. On my page, you'll also find an interview I did with Swedish sociologist Daniel Gertz about Jordan Peterson and metamodernism, which I think turned out pretty well. Anyway, really appreciate all you guys for watching and everything you do for the channel. So, as always, see you next time. Peace.